Yay. So you said that you were a little bit nervous to do this. Why is that?
I've done a couple of these now, but for whatever reason, I get more nervous with this kind of stuff than it is with, I guess, throwing myself off of ramps. I haven't, this is my first time like working from home and with the whole pandemic thing and learning to Zoom with people. And I'm much better with like people in person. But when screens lag and audio lags and you're like trying to wait for cues and there's no visual cues, I always feel like I sound like 1,000 times more awkward like on video than I do in person, which probably isn't true. It's probably very much the same awkwardness, but it's just me.
Yeah, I mean, Zoom has completely changed the way that all of us communicate. I mean, I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it weren't for Zoom. So I think that there are positives and negatives.
Oh, for sure, for sure. More positives than negatives, but it always makes you check like, do I really sound like that? Stuff like that.
So let's just dive into this. How did you discover BMX?
So I had always known like bikes was a thing. Um, my uncle used to race when I was little, and really the biggest, most vivid memory from him racing when I was younger was the fact that my mom and my grandmother took us to a race and let us dye our hair half red and half green, and that was it. I don't know how the race was. I didn't. I guess I like didn't pay attention that much because I was just a little kid, didn't care. It was just exciting. But I didn't really let that sink in until I was older. And I could always ride a bike because my family taught me when I was 4, I believe, um, just by like letting me try in the backyard. So like I had the normal skills of being able to pedal and just ride. And after losing my love of cheerleading and the adrenaline rush that came with that, I needed something that kind of felt similar to like that scary, but my body is very tired. I feel like I progressed. I've got that sense of accomplishment. Like I worked hard on something that was a little above my level of grasp. And I tried bodybuilding. It was awesome, but it just wasn't enough of like a mental stimulation for me. Like I need lots of energy, lots of scary. Like I need the what ifs, the almost, all that good stuff in between. And then finally, like I did it. And bodybuilding was cool. It took a lot of like mental focus and changing behaviors and breaking habits and eating better and making sure I worked out every day and things like that. So it was super rewarding. It just wasn't enough of an adrenaline rush for me. So after that happened, I tried skateboarding for a bit, got sponsored to learn, which was kind of funny. It was a little small company. It was really cool. Totally couldn't do it. I don't have the attention span for it. So my next option was bikes. And I was like, it kind of was like an epiphany one day where I decided that I was going to get a bike. I was going to start messing around with it outside of my just typical, hybrid, like road mountain bike type thing. I just have a Trek that I love. And it's been with me for most of my life, but it's not the kind of bike that I can use for skate parks and things like that. So got a bike from a bunch of friends who I didn't know were friends, and then started hanging out with them and became friends with them, and kind of just fell in love with it. And it's like hooked me ever since.
So let's go back to early childhood. I mean, you were playing so many different sports, and then you found cheerleading. And then once cheerleading didn't work out, there was also, once again, this period of time where you were like, what am I going to do now? Kind
Mhm.
of walk me through how you ended up at those different points in your life and how what made those decisions to move forward for you.
So when I was little, I did, the things, the recreational things your parents put you in because you have too much energy and you're driving them crazy and you need to go let some of it out. So my parents had me in soccer. That was fun. But you know how some kids grasp onto that early and they love it and they stick with it. It just wasn't my thing. Like I still love kicking the soccer ball around today, but it was nothing like my love for the next sports coming up. And I did softball. That was really fun. It was just one of those like let loose, don't think about it, play hard kind of sports for me. And I played that all through. I did rec sports. I did all that through middle school. a little bit in like third, fifth grade, and then high school. So after my season with cheerleading was over, I'd bounce over to softball, vice versa. But I did all of that, and I I'm losing my train of thought. I it was all like a lot of fun, but nothing really grabbed me like cheerleading did, and that was what like hooked me into that needing that adrenaline rush. Um, but as far as like it segueing into bikes, um, it kind of all like communicates, but doesn't really make sense. If that makes me sense. Um, but yeah, but I totally got off track there. Could you ask me the rest of that question? It's been a
Yeah,
long
so
week.
how did you decide when you were going from cheerleading to the next thing? I mean, you were talking about seeking adrenaline throughout all of these sport shifts. What were you looking for specifically, and why did each sport along the way move you toward BMX?
Okay. Sorry, it's been a long week.
No, you're good.
A super crazy week. A good one, but a crazy one. Um, okay, so I am very, very high energy, like to the point to where my brain is more of a creative brain than like can sit down and focus on things. So I've always been the kid that just needed loud, colorful, exciting. And since I was little, I've always needed that. And so my parents had me in gymnastics, and that kind of triggered me to want to learn tumbling, and didn't ever make it on a gymnastics team. It was kind of like a crazy situation there where I was supposed to be on a team and then didn't, but I was also little, so it didn't really matter much to me anyways. But when a coach is like, your kid has potential, let's put him on the team, and then it doesn't happen, your parents get a little flustered there. So we were almost about to leave that gym, and then one of the coaches who I absolutely loved was like, hey, you have a knack for this, tumbling wise, why don't you try cheerleading? It's a different level of skills. You're still using the things that you've learned. And I tried that for a bit and completely fell in love with that. And really, what I think my body was looking for was that crazy expel of energy that was in a positive way. So, I was never the kid who wasn't really a partier. Like I wasn't into the my parents said don't do this, so I'm gonna try that. Like I needed just constant energy and movement. Um, and I I had a hard time if my body didn't get enough energy out. So with that being said, like going through all these sports, like there were some that really caught my interest and my attention and tired me enough where I could sit down and focus. And then there were the ones that kind of didn't, for example, bodybuilding, like that was fun, but it wasn't something that really like, there's this something about this feeling of when you have a really good week, or you have they say like a really good Sunday will leave you with an entire week of like content, just happiness. And that is so true for me because especially when I was cheerleading, I had three different teams that I was on at the same time. And this was in college. So, and I was studying to be a phys ed teacher at the same time. So like I had a lot going on, but because of the amount of energy I was able to get out, I could sit and focus. And I was not the kind of kid who was really great at sitting and, studying for tests and being good at grades. Like it literally never came naturally to me. I wasn't one of those people. Um, so I had to physically tire my body out to get a decent amount of focus. So these things really helped. And to this day, as an adult, I still can tell like when I don't get enough energy out. Like this past week, I didn't really get outside as much as I wanted to. I'm all over the place. Like I can't really focus that well. I'm stuttering with things. Like my confidence level is decent, but it would be that much better if I had been able to get the energy that I needed to out to just continue on. So that's what cheerleading used to do for me. And when I started student teaching, I kind of lost that. So I needed something else. And I went through my range of trying different things, and nothing really hooked me the way that bikes did, because it was something that I could do with people, I could do without people. I could kick around in the living room and practice silly things on my bike. I could be outside, I could ride trails. There were so many different options where I could be creative, or if I was having one of those days where I needed more of a structured feeling, I ride one set of trails that has one line and you go one way. Like versus the days where I'm like, all right, I'm feeling like I could branch out a little bit. And then I get creative at a skate park and I try to learn different lines that I didn't see before because I was tunnel vision. So it kind of was like I kind of craved that feeling of structure and also feeling of being able to just move in a way that I needed it. And that's what bikes did for me. And, all the sports leading up to it, like I said, were really awesome. I love them all. Like I was dancing, I was doing gymnastics, I was in cheerleading, I was playing softball, like they all kind of held a special place in my heart, but they all kind of led me to realize like I need to be moving a certain amount and I need a certain amount of this is absolutely terrifying. I love it. And like, I don't know, it kind of like it all kind of came together in that sense.
So let's talk about this negative coaching experience that you ran into during your cheerleading experience. What happened, and was that what did it for you for cheerleading, or was it something else?
No, so when I was little, I was on, and this is kind of what brought me away from cheerleading for a tiny bit, but I picked it back up in high school. So if you want to look at my timeline, when I was younger, I played soccer. Then I went over to swimming, all the little kid things that you normally do, right? Then I went into gymnastics. I did that for a long time. Then I went into cheerleading. I was also playing softball, I think around that time. That's a lie. I started softball after because that's my lull and what my activities were. So when I was in fourth grade, I was on an all-star cheerleading team. This was the one that the gym recommended me go to. I know you can tell my brain is literally all over the place. Probably hard to keep up with. Um, it's a blessing and a curse. but but so in fourth grade, I'm on this team. And this was like my first experience with a coach basically reaming out. Now our team was fourth grade to eighth grade. And like you can imagine that is a wide range of personalities, maturity levels, things that kids have seen. I'm from a very small town at that point, not the town that the team was based out of, which was much bigger. Like I guess you could say I was a little more sheltered. Okay. And not in a bad way, but we're a small town in Connecticut, and there's surrounding towns which were much more, I guess, larger, and the kids were more seasoned, if that makes any sense. So, anyways, with that wide range of ages on this team, that was my first experience with a coach. Us coming off the floor, we were excited. I think we were in like Atlantic City, like somewhere nuts, um, and they reamed us out. And as a fourth grader who had never been reamed out by anyone but their parents for probably doing something they deserved, um, that was like a very strange experience because I was like, we did so good. I was so excited. I gave my mom and dad a big hug, and then I went over to talk to coach, and coach was pissed. And in front of an entire lobby of people, in front of all of our parents, like, I can't believe this performance. You were terrible. Just crazy things that, like, okay, sure, the eighth graders had already heard this because they had been on the team for a bit. But this was like an all-star team, not based out of a school. Like, this was something we paid for a lot of money for. Um, it was just like not what I expected. And now looking back at that, that was probably normal because all-star cheerleading is like pretty gnarly and a little cutthroat. And I don't know if you have much experience with like talking to people who've been on those teams. It can get like pageant momish. Yeah. And it's like the kids are competing, now the moms are competing. Now this one's yelling at this one, and there's a meltdown over here. Like it is so dramatic. And I loved the athletic side of it, loved it because it was tiring. It was fun. I'm learning new things. Like it's something different. It's scary. But like that whole side of when I had my coach like read me out in front of a lobby full of people and I'm sitting there in like a little skirt and a bow, I'm like, well, this is different, you know? And at that point, I don't really remember exactly how long I stayed on it. I think I finished out the year. But I guess my parents caught the vibe that I like wasn't quite interested in that. And although like I absolutely loved it and loved tumbling and flipping and all this crazy stuff, like it wasn't what I needed. And I think they realized that that probably wasn't a good thing for me because I would have ended up maybe a little bitter. But after that, that's when I started doing softball and dance. And dance was a whole nother animal, good and bad things there, kind of crazy. A little bit like the cheerleading side, but that whole cheerleading, like getting reamed out was a lesson for sure. Like it was something that I don't really want to run into again. And if my children run into that, I'd probably be very angry. Like there's a difference between constructive criticism and telling your kids like, hey, you guys could have done a little better than that. Like, but we're not getting any money from this. So it's really not a big deal if you win or lose. It's a trophy. but but like I think I'd be a little taken back if that was the case. Like, but yeah, it was interesting, very interesting. It
So how
never.
do you,
Oh, sorry.
oh,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how do you think that that impacted the rest of the way that you received coaching?
After that, I've only had good coaches,
So that really
which was
was an anomaly.
no, it wasn't. It was yeah, it was very strange. Like, and so it didn't stop me from cheerleading either. I still loved that, but it did like I didn't cheer from that point on until I got to high school. I still kept up with tumbling because I was doing dance, and a lot of the time in dance class that I would just teach myself the tricks and stuff like that. The dance world was a little harder because we did compete, and it's funny because if you ask me now if I can dance, like not in the slightest. I'm not good at that. I was usually like doing the acrobatic stunts in the background of the dances, but but it was a little bit similar to that. So, but it wasn't anything. It was a different kind of constructive criticism. You know, at times like it was frustrating and tiring, but it was also this person's business and they wanted their business to look good because they're, they put out this level of effort for the kids, and if the kids don't really care, then why are you paying to be on a competition team? It was like I get it. Wasn't quite my forte. My sister did it for a long time and absolutely loved it, but I watched her go through some hell. And at that point I was like, screw this. Like that's why are you dealing with this? But after that point, I really had only had good coaches who kind of cared about like my best interest versus what they looked like. And I had a coach in high school who was the coach of for cheerleading was the coach of a crazy college team, and she held us to the same standards as her college kids, and we went far, and it was pretty cool. The only time I had a little bit of an issue with that was when I wasn't doing well in school, and I was the kid who worked her butt off to try to do well, but still it just school wasn't my thing, and I wasn't a bad kid for it. I just had a hard time understanding, picking up and learning fast. And I got questioned over that, over my grades, and it was one of those situations where I should have been asked what was going on before I got punished for what was going on. Um, because in that situation, I was doing everything I could to get that C. And I was lucky I had that C. And after, having like a sit down conversation, it was understood that not every kid on the team was at the same level of learning. And some of us needed a little bit extra. Some of us, this was our life and we worked really hard on this side, but we had this much easier, like it is what it is. But other than that, like I said, I'd really only had good coaches after that, and coaches that really cared and tried and were interested in making sports fun and giving us something to chase when we were older, and just like kind of shaping us into good kids, which was really awesome. So
How did you figure out that you were good at biking? Because
I'm not.
it sounds like it's the first rather unconventional sport that you tried.
Yeah. I mean, besides skateboarding, but that was like kind of a silly thing. But I am I will try anything athletic. Like you know, I I don't know how to explain it. Like I jumped onto a cross country team when I was in my freshman year of high school. Like I've done a lot of different sports. Um, because I thought it was a running club. We didn't have a high school yet for my town because it was so small. So they shifted us over to, I know it's crazy. They shifted us over to a town next to us to have us all go to that high school for our freshman year. And when I was, in eighth grade and leaving my hometown to go to this brand new high school, which I knew some of the kids because of my recreational softball, which was pretty cool. So that was nice. Um, I, went to a sports fair, and of course, every table you walk by, they're like, hey, join our this, join our that, try out for this, whatever. And my mom was like, do cross country. And I was like, okay. And I thought it was a running club. I just thought it was something to just like make friends and stay active after school kind of thing. I didn't realize what it was, but it was also something that I hadn't really been exposed to before. And like my mom ran track and participated in field events when she was in high school, and she was a cheerleader. She did a bunch of other things. And I was like I said, I just, okay, sure. Show me the ropes, buy me the sneakers, let's do the thing, right? And I ended up winning a freshman invitational. I was on the varsity team. Like I somehow worked my way up there with the kids who were like top runners. I can't even tell you my times. I'm not even gonna lie. Like it was just fun for me. I don't even think, I think I had the option to go to states, but like I really wasn't that into it. So I like just didn't really go. I don't remember. I really don't remember. I know. But it wasn't my love, like it wasn't the thing I wanted. And there were kids on the team that was what they loved and that's what they did. And like I was happy to give them that because yeah, this was so fun for me, but this isn't what I want to do, and like I'm having a blast. I'll try anything, but it wasn't my thing. And ended up, because the natural thing after that was to go into track. I did that also. I didn't end up playing softball for that high school because that team was very, very competitive. And although I knew a lot of the girls, um, something pushed me away from it. And it wasn't a negative thing. I think it was just like a not into it. And I just kind of I was very like chased what I felt. I still kind of am. And I think that's kind of what leads me to try these things like this because it's, if the opportunity is in front of you, why not jump? Why not see what happens? Because you don't know. You might completely flop. You might love it. You might hate it and then love it. I was me with snowboarding. I cried so hard. I was like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this anymore. Next couple of times now, I love it. I still die on the mountain, but I love it. But I realized that I I still wouldn't call myself good at bikes because I'm constantly learning, but I'm not afraid to fall. And I think that's what cheerleading and gymnastics taught me was like you're gonna land on it. You're gonna I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this. I usually try not to, but you're gonna fall a bunch, you're gonna eat mat. Like it is what it is. This is how we learn. And you'll know that once you land on your head, you have to move a little different because it hurts. You don't want to do that again. So it's kind of taught me that like first of all, I know how to bail, and that was huge because bailing on a bike is an art. Like when you're learning to tumble on your own, you're only worried about your body and landing in an acceptable position on the floor to where you're not breaking anything, or the person who's spotting you, which usually will move out of the way. But when you're bailing off of a bike, like you have this object that you can land on anyhow you land on it, and it's gonna suck. So I had to learn how to like know I'm falling, register that, throw the bike, and then bail and land how I needed to so I didn't get hurt. And that didn't scare me, where a lot of people are very nervous about that. And I think it's what holds a lot of people back, especially us women, because, like we don't want to get hurt. It sucks, and like sometimes we tend to be a little bit more fragile than the guys. It just is what it is. Like bodies are made different. And when you fall, things hurt different, and I've been lucky enough to not have that fear until I broke my shoulder. Then it took me like a little bit to get over that, but I'm okay now because I know like things heal. As long as you're making smart decisions in the air, like it shouldn't be that bad. Plan accordingly. um, but it's I don't know, it's like sucked me in, it's pulled me into bikes. And although like I'm not where I want to be personally, I'm happy at my progression. And like people ask me that all the time, and I'm like, but you don't understand. Like, I'm not, if I was good at this, like, I'd not be falling anymore, that kind of thing. And they're like, no, but you're working on it. I'm like, that's how I describe it. Like, I'm working on it. I'm still learning. I'm getting there.
So, how old were you when you started BMX, and how old were you when you broke your shoulder? Because that's a
So
serious injury.
yeah, I was 25 when I picked up my BMX bike. It was a super heavy, basically, like when you go to a bar, right? And they're raffling off a snowboard, and you can't really ride this snowboard, but it looks like you can. So this was like the kind of bike that I had bought from a friend, and my friend saw it, and he was actually, I went to high school with him at that first high school. Um, he knew that I loved Monster Energy because I've always been intrigued with like the extreme sports, that kind of thing. They're tied to it. So he knew that I loved that. And he's like, I have the perfect bike for you. My friend has it. It's his wife's, like, he's selling it. I bought this bike, super heavy. And I rode that for a bit and ate a lot of dirt because it was not quite made for me. Um, but that was my I'm 25 and I'm going on an adventure, adventure like starter bike. Um, and it got me where I needed to be. And since then I've progressed. But my have a, when I broke my shoulder, it was, I don't know, 3 years later. Wasn't that long ago. Maybe 2 years, 2 years later. Because I've really only been riding for like 4 years. So I guess it was like a
Wow.
midpoint. But we call it like the reapers checking in on you, like make sure that like you can still get hurt. Be careful, it happens. But
So in the hidden opponent article that I read that introduced me to you, you had said that there is research linking dopamine to pedaling. Can you talk to me a little bit about that research and how that is implemented in your life?
I can't remember where I found this article or when I found it, but it was at like the perfect time of that aha moment that's like, now I fully understand why I feel so good on my bike. And honestly, I think people feel this feeling when they exercise. And I know that's also science because moving gets your blood flowing, gets your brain working, gets oxygen to your lungs and gets oxygen to your brain. And then everything kind of connects. And if you're giving your body that movement, it's thankful for it. And there's a reason why people who start moving to heal themselves if they are hurt get better faster because it's like rewarding their brain as well as their body. Maybe it's going to be a slow road, but all in all it's a really good thing. And I really wish I knew all the background of it, but it definitely sticks in my mind that those things are coordinated together. I'm not sciencey by any means. It was one of those things I struggled with in school. But there's this in this article I read, that while you're pedaling, you can't really think about anything else because it's one of those movements that your body kind of like sucks in as like, this is what I'm focused on. And it recognizes it as something that kind of like takes over what you're doing. And it's also because you're working with both sides of your body. So how like one side is coordinated with the other side is coordinated with the other kind of thing. And it's I'm sorry, I'm getting work messages right now. They're like, hey, what are you doing? um, I put it on my calendar, so we're fine. But yeah, no, moving with both sides of your body. That's why, like, so when I was a teacher, we used to tell the kids, if they had been sitting for a bit, and this was before I was phys ed, so I was working as like a teacher's aide, that kind of thing. We would have the kids stand up, and the first thing we would have them do is like take their elbow and attach it to their other knee, and then stand straight up and switch. And it kind of gave them that little boost of that was the only thing they could think of, because it takes coordination to do that and focus on where your arm and your elbow or your knee and your elbow are going, but also they realized that that was the only thing their brain was thinking about. So it was the only thing that they could focus on, which kind of like derailed them from the task of what they were working on, so they could take a breath of fresh air and then come back to the task. And I always thought that kind of stuff was cool. And it's one of my goals is to research more on like the actual science behind all of this. But if I can find that article, I'm going to share it like crazy, because it was just the coolest thing to like put what I was thinking into words and realize that someone had already like figured this out and written about it. But there's definitely a science behind pedaling and just like clearing your brain and finding that happiness because you're moving, but also because it's fun and it's scary. But even if you're just pedaling a bike, you know, I've talked to multiple people on different levels who say like pedaling their bike, whether it's in a straight line or trails or anything, just brings them happiness because you're moving forward. You know, you're doing something, you're not thinking. It's just like you're in the moment, you're moving, and it's just I'm saying the same things over and over again, but it's important to me, and it's just one of those cool like aha moments that I was like stoked that I found that. I need to find it again though.
Yeah,
I can't find that
when I
article.
put this episode together, I'll try to find that and see what else went into that research, because I think that that's really interesting.
It is. It's really cool, and it's like, you know, finding what something that you love and coordinating it with bringing happiness is even cooler. You know, it's like how art does crazy things for people, whether it be art therapy or just, you know, mindless doodling because you're listening while you're doodling and that's helping you absorb information better. Like there's so many cool things behind the things that we love that we don't realize are connected. And I just like that's so exciting to me. I need to try to find that too. If you find it, let me know and then reshare it with me, and then I'll see if it's the same one, because there's a couple of things out there. I know that for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'll look for it and I'll direct message you and see if I can find it.
yeah, please.
So, going along those lines, what part of you and your mind and the way it works do you think that BMX lights a fire under?
Well, definitely that it keeps me challenged. There are some like parts of BMX that are so simple that I really should be able to do and should have dedicated time to figure out by now. But my attention span doesn't have time for it at the moment. So, you know, and it's funny because I'm constantly getting yelled at by my friends, like, you need to learn this before you can do this. And then I'll do, you know, need to learn A before you can do B. And then I'll go and do B. And they're like, I don't know how you did that, but you're not gonna be able to do it again because you didn't learn A. And that's where like I work almost backwards in that sense. But there are some days when I know I need to challenge myself to work forwards, because it is also a level of safety. And there's certain things that, you know, you kind of can't work around for very long before it catches you. Like, for example, something called a manual. A manual is a wheelie. And essentially, it's creating bike control to where you know where your whole bike and your whole body is. And you have to make sure that you can put it in certain places to hold this wheelie up in the air. But with that being said, that wheelie transfers over to dropping into a skate park bowl, with jumping a bike where you need to keep your body in a certain position. You know, if you lean too far forward, your wheelie is going to drop. If you lean too far forward when you go to jump the jump, your nose casing and your bike is you're going to break your shoulder like me. Things like that. So, you know, there's stuff that like transfers over.
And then talking about the impact of the mental side. I mean, you've talked extensively about the fact that it fueled your need to keep moving forward, mentally and physically. Was there anything that you were working through, like anxiety or ADHD, that BMX really targeted and assisted?
Actually, very much so. And so the photo that kind of in the video that kind of like caught attention, and actually brought a lot of the podcasts that I've done to light was at a time that I was like broken. Um, my parents had just gotten a divorce. I don't think it was finalized at that point, but I think things started to get pretty gnarly, and it was like no turning back from that. And my whole life had been very like family, 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 family. So that was a bit of, it still is really hard to be honest. And it definitely still throws me off some days, but because I'm not good at balancing things. So, now I have two parents to balance as opposed to one phone call to two parents at home, that kind of thing. So, and it's simple things like that, like our brains should be able to do because we're very capable humans, but we have a hard time with certain small things. So that was one of the things that was happening. And I had also just left a job teaching phys ed, and I got myself into a super toxic situation. Um, and I don't want to say too much because I never want to bash too hard, but I was in a situation where it felt like it was more so about the money than it was about the kids. And a lot of things happened that really questioned, like, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do? I'm not really going to win this battle of advocating for the kids. I don't even have the equipment I need. I'm kind of constantly made to feel like I can't succeed. Like, there was a lot going on. And I also didn't have health insurance, and I also didn't have really time off. So I was in a situation where my mental status was like, you can imagine, as your first teaching job, you're like up here, and you finally found it, and maybe it's just a stepping stone for now, but you found it, you're good, you're locked in, you're ready to go, you're excited, you have all your books and your sticky notes, and like, you're ready for these kids, and you are hyped with all your lessons and things that they're going to learn and love. And my goal was to go in there and teach kids that, like, hey, it's not about football your entire life, because most adults will sit on the couch and just watch it for the rest of their life and never get off the couch. Like, it's about everything you can do. We can hike, we can run, we can dance, we can do all of the things. Like, lifetime of fitness activities and fun. And I had gotten myself into this situation where I felt like I could never do anything right, even when I asked questions, even when I asked for resources. And it really, like, destroyed my self-confidence. And while you're going through other things like that, it kind of brings you to a point to where it's like, all right, well, let me reevaluate, like, what I actually have right now that feels like it's going well. And bikes had been kind of the only thing that was really felt like I was doing well with and progressing with. So I kind of took full advantage of that. And when I left the school I was at, I put in my 2 weeks, and this was after kind of being fed up, very tired, all that gnarly stuff. And I don't even think I was given a full week, and it was grading season, or grading, it was grading time. So I had gotten my grades in, I was texted to go to the office and to go over the grades with the administration, just to make sure everything was there, all good. And at this point, I was probably like, I don't know, I was like a day shy away from the week being over. And I still had a full week left before my 2 weeks was up. And mind you, when I put in my 2 weeks, they had fully understood. They're like, well, thank you. Like, no worries, it's all good. But what was crazy is, so, like, I went into the office, and, they pretended to go over the grades, and then kind of turned their chair to me and looked at me and were like, the real reason we wanted to talk to you, right? And I'm like, you said it was grades. You said that my classes were all handled for the hour that you needed me, that I had a good sub. The sub that was helping was a really good person, loved her. The kids loved her. It was awesome. Nobody knew what was going on except the sub, but she knew before me that she was taking over my class that day, which was a little strange to me. And he's like, well, yeah, but really the reason that we called you in here is because we wanted to afford you the chance to go look for a job, because we know you don't have one now. And I'm like, okay. And I'm a very weak person in some situations. Like, I'm a little emotional, which is ironic because I would rather break bones over being sad. And I say that all the time, and everyone laughs at me, but I'm definitely one of those people that, like, I feel things. I'm for sure an empath. Like, I feel it, and I'm also a woman, so that happens too, it is what it is. But I didn't really know what to say in that point. And then I remember we ended up walking down the hill back to my gym, and I got into the classroom, my gym, and they walked me up onto the stage, which is where my desk was, which was a folding table. on the middle of the stage. I didn't really even have like an office or anywhere to keep my paperwork or anything like that. And watched me take my things away. And meanwhile, my third grade class is sobbing because they don't know what's going on, which was like wild to me. And nobody really knew what was happening. And I got walked out to my car. And the last question that was asked of me was, what is it about this place that you hate so much? And I was like, I don't hate it. I'm struggling to see where like the kids are benefiting from this, and it's not just about money. And the last thing that was said was, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And that was it. And then I had to leave. Meanwhile, my third grade class is sobbing because they just watched me get walked out. There's no explanation of what's going on. Like, it was the most like sly, crazy way to do that. And that was right before Swamp Fest, which was that photo of the backflip of the loop. And I had no feeling. And I was like, I don't care what happens. I'm doing something that feels good, and that I'm doing okay, and that I'm feeling like I'm accomplishing something. And that was the product of that. But a lot of the things that I've done actually have been products of me having a hard time expressing how I'm feeling. So I just kind of let it out with my riding, my movement. So long story short.
Let's talk about that. So where do you find that you draw the line between perfection and perfectionism and the tendencies that come along with that versus trusting your body to land jumps and be in these extreme scenarios on your bike?
I know when my body needs a break, and it took me a little while to learn that. And I didn't know that in high school when I was cheerleading. I had broken both ankles in high school, didn't know, and then went to college and started tumbling on them as well. And I just kept basically chipping bones away. And after I had those ankle surgeries, I also tore my ACL and meniscus later on after that, while I was teaching cheerleading camp. But I kind of knew from those ankle incidents that like I needed to pay more attention to my body and what I felt like. So I never really let myself get to the point to where like I'm not fully aware of what's going on. And if I have the adrenaline and the attention span to go at something when I am angry or frustrated like that, like I do, because I would rather it come out in that way than just melting and crying and unpacking and living in that feeling. And because it is hard for me to get out of some of those feelings on occasion. And I definitely struggle with that. And, like, I hate to say that I definitely have some sort of depression because it's undiagnosed. And I never want to take that away from someone who for sure has it and know they're diagnosed with it. But I'm pretty positive I have something there. And my anxiety that comes with it is pretty wild sometimes. So that's why I try to turn it into an experience to where I am in full control. And that's where I like kind of like rope in all the things that I am under control or that I do have full control over. So in that situation, like it might not even be about like being perfect at what I'm doing. It sometimes just means like that was ugly, but I landed it. Like that's all I needed. I just needed to get there. I needed to make it. I needed to cross that finish line, whether I look like absolute garbage or whether I, came in fully dressed up, like, it's one of those things where I can kind of separate that situation too. And although there are definitely times when I am feeling those things and I'm going at something and I'm constantly going at it, I've kind of figured out a way in most situations, because sometimes it is hard, but I've kind of figured out a way to like, is this worth it for me to keep going? Because I'm not really that close to it. Do I feel like I made enough progress to where I feel accomplished? And I'm not going to be mad at myself that I didn't keep trying. Or do I just need a break and recalibrate and then come back to it and then see how I feel again? So I kind of like do a bunch of different things in those situations. It's like a case by case basis, but I know that I can't hurt myself in a way that I can totally knock myself out of the game. I have to make sure that I'm still okay because my body and my brain depend on being okay and still being able to do something. So that's why I'm like, it's kind of all over the place, if that makes sense. They're the worst answers ever, I'm sure.
No, they're not. I mean, they're exactly how you're feeling. That can't be a wrong answer.
Total tangents, but within the same realm.
Where do you think that you fit in within the industry? And conversely, what makes you stand out?
Being a chick in BMX is like way better than apparently it used to be. Um, I'm lucky enough to know one of the women named Nina who like kind of pioneered it for us and was the one who said like, hey, I kind of want to try this, and was gung-ho enough to just jump on and do it. And we are forever grateful for her for that, because she is also still a voice of like advocacy and just like hype, and she's so human but so cool that it's really awesome. Her Instagram is Nina Burrito. I'm gonna pronounce her last name wrong, but it's Betrago, I think. But she's just like the coolest, one of the coolest people. But being a woman in BMX definitely has its like its hard points, and it also is what makes me stand out, I think, because I have to earn my place for sure. And I'm okay with that. I've never once have I walked in saying like, hey, I deserve this. Get out of my way. I'm taking a run. Like, I wait in line and I drop in, and I'm okay with that. And I have been lucky enough to be around people who are more supportive than not. And it's funny because in some situations I found that the male side of our sport, who, yeah, they kind of dominate our sport, are also some of my bigger supporters, sometimes even more so than some of the women. Because there's emotions and feelings and like competition and comparisons, which is so like unhealthy, but we do it anyways with the world that we're raised up in, with social media and comparing ourselves and all that nonsense. But sometimes I find that it's easier for me to like feel the support from the guys, because they can see the change, they just don't know always how to register it. And I've been talking a lot with friends about this, and how we can get them to kind of understand that like it's okay for this difference, and we hear you supporting us, we're cool with it, we love it. But like give us a little more room sometimes. But it's also, like I said, I've been very lucky with being supported by almost everybody. But I also think it's because I'm hands in the dirt, like learning with them, and like they're watching me eat complete shit and get up and be human or cry when it hurts. Like they see that I'm very in it. And like I said, that helps me blend into our sport, because that's how you learn. But then it also helps me stand out, because it's like they know that I love this. Like everybody, I think, kind of gets the vibe that I'm way too excited to be here, way too energetic. And like I am thankful that they receive it that way, that it's never annoying, it's more hype. um, but I think the way that our sport is going is really cool. And the women who have made it made it what it is, like we're all so thankful for that. They kind of like shoved their foot in the door, and that it's just continuously opening, and everyone's excited and riding, and it's keeping our sport alive, and everyone's having a good time. But
Can you kind of explain to me the difference in the BMX industry and how you move up, how you get sponsors? I mean, how do you continue to make this a career choice?
so I have yet to find that out. I okay. So as far as sponsorship goes, a lot of people will look for people who compete. They want to know where your face is. Like if you're going to be a brand representative and kind of everywhere, and you have the right energy or whatever coordinates with their vibe. It's not exactly what it used to be. I know, back when people were getting sponsored, they were physically sending in like VHS tapes of their riding clips, and that was how you showed off what you did. And I listen to my boyfriend talk about it all the time, and his friends, like, you didn't know what people were riding like until you saw the next Ride magazine or the next BMX edit that came out from the company that they were sponsored by. Like people didn't really, like, people toyed with making their own edits and things like that. But really the way to get sponsored was to show the company what you can do. And if they liked your vibe, if they liked your skill, they would pull you in. it's kind of like shaped our world, but unfortunately, like the internet has kind of ruined that. And like I said, I'm speaking from what I'm listening to my friends and like people who've been riding for like 15, 20, 30 years, like have to say. And I'm also thankful that I have so many people that are like way older than me who can kind of explain all this to me so that I don't look dumb when I'm trying to figure out, what the line of like the chain of commands is to get to where you want to be. But as far as me, like the companies who have brought me in, to be honest, I think it's mostly a vibes thing. Um, and then once they saw my vibes and got how, a little glimpse of how I am and my personality and how I work, then from there they kind of dipped into seeing like my level of how much I love this and what's next and stuff like that. And I think it's kind of cool because the companies that do support me, it's like I'm not a paid athlete. I'm lucky enough to have found a biking job, and I can explain that too, which is really cool. But uh, I'm I'm growing with them, so it's we're all kind of bouncing off each other and content and creativity and all that other stuff. And it's more so like in order to be pro, you really kind of have to be competing in all the things. Like no one goes pro in dirt trails, which is where my heart kind of is. Maybe they used to, but not quite anymore. I guess it's a little harder for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's hard. There really isn't any ladder. You kind of just gotta trailblaze. And the first thing that my friend Joe, who basically like introduced me to the whole side of freestyle BMX after I started racing, met him and was like, "You're my coach now. This is it." And he's like, "Okay." The first thing he said to me was like, "Hey, please always do this because you love it. Also, you're going to get very frustrated if you think this is something you can make money off of. It happens, like it's a thing, but don't count on it and just like do it because it makes you happy." So that really stuck with me. And I was pretty stoked to go back to him and be like, "Hey, guess what? I got a bike job." But in the lines of like being somebody in BMX, in my mind and my heart, it's all about who you're I guess inspiring and showing love to. And you if your attitude is good and your energy is there, people like that and they get excited about that, and they can tell whether you love what you do or whether you're doing it for the money or to get famous or something stupid like that. Like they're not dumb, they see through it.
So let's talk about this bike job.
Okay.
Can you give me some more details about how it came to be and what it entails?
Yeah, for sure. So I work for a company called Down to Ride, and it is a cycling app that actually helps people either coordinate group rides or find group rides or make friends through rides. And this is kind of like the world is your oyster if you're a biker, how you want to use it, whether you are whether you're like a team leader and you have a whole group of people that you want to ride with and you put your ride on the app every Thursday, but then those people are already on the app and they can see what other rides are happening the rest of the week. It kind of just helps connect people. And our main goal is, let's just get more people on bikes. Like we all recognize how happy they make us and how excited we are about them and what they've done for us and the places they've taken us. Like why not share that with everybody else? And it's super important. The biking community is like crazy. It's just such a cool place. And there's so many different people. Like we literally ride with people who are legitimate rocket scientists. And then we ride with people who do the van life and they work odd jobs here and there, but they eat peanut butter and jelly and are the happiest people on the planet because they have their bike, they ride every weekend and sometimes in between, and life is good. Like it's such a range of, like, I like to call us all misfits because we really are. Like we kind of don't fit together, but we do. And we are all so happy just to be around each other. And it kind of goes the same way for all the biking communities. And like I can speak for BMX because obviously I'm involved in that, but we all share this love for two wheels, this love for movement, and this love for like community that it's like it's just a really cool feeling. When people are bike people, it's just a different feeling. And the cool part is like, you're not a bike person, you want to jump on a bike, come on in. Like, let's go. We'll teach you the ropes. Pick your weapon of choice. Like, please, I would love to come ride. And like we can get you figured out with whatever bike you need or want, and you can try everyone's bike. And it's like they're just happy to keep people riding and more friends, more fun, more laughs. Like life is so short and this world is pretty ugly right now. And if there's a couple things that are healthy things that we can do that aren't gonna, like drink us into a slump or anything crazy like that, like why not try it? But this job is exactly that. And I'm so excited to have found it. And it is a startup, so it's a little difficult because I haven't been really involved in a startup yet, but it's been so rewarding because like we're literally talking about bikes and introducing bike people to other bike people and connecting this and connecting that. And now you have a cool app that you can talk to each other, on the group ride and add pictures of your groups and like times and information. It's just really cool. I totally suggest you check it out. And if you are on it, my name is the same as my screen name so that I could kind of keep that my screen name, like this is AOL. My my Instagram. I'm showing my age. um, but it's the same as my Instagram name, JOC313. So if anybody wants to jump on there, has no idea what's going on, add me. I can show you like how to figure it out. But the other thing is like we're not pushy. So if you realize like this isn't really going to work for what you want, like that's my favorite part is like we're not going to force you to do anything. We're not salesy. We're just really stoked to get people to ride. And if we can spark some sort of stoke in you, like to make you want to do that and find new friends within this app, like hell yeah. But the reason I even found this job was because a friend from high school, I was going through a little bit of a low spot. I was kind of in a slump and he was the right person to message me at the time. And he reached out and he was like, hey, just want to thank you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like I hadn't talked to this person forever. And he's like, well, I started riding bikes because of you. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And I guess he'd been following my progress and my adventures. And he's like, I've been riding bikes because of you. He's like, I saw that Bethel was a thing, which is the old racetrack I used to race at all the time. And they have weekly races and weekly practices, which gives us some sort of routine and structure for people like me who like to have things to look forward to and know it's happening. And he started racing. I didn't know because I was already living in a new state in Long Island or in New York. So I moved over here with my boyfriend. And he's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, he's just the right person to ask at the right time when I don't typically like kind of share that stuff. And like, to be honest, I'm having a hard time. And we kind of talked a little bit about it. And he told me what he was going through. And he was struggling with some crazy medical things that kind of like set him back a bunch, but was able to find bikes and was using that to heal himself, which was cool. It was so cool to hear. And then, I told him about my struggles of being frustrated and really wanting to find a remote job that was also bikes related and how hard that kind of was. And he's like, hey, check this site. Pointed me in the direction of a site called Grow Cycling, which has all cycling jobs I had no idea existed. And I found the DTR job for community manager, which is my title, that had been posted 23 hours before I found it. It was like the universe was screaming at me. And I applied and I sent probably the most nerdy, overexcited, too much information, hyped up email and cover letter. My friends helped me pull together my resume really fast. So I'm thankful for them for that. Like it was like perfect timing. I sent that through and I got a message the next morning and I was like beside myself. And the first I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't real. Like, how could someone want to bike or have a biking job like this? Like it's from home. I have unlimited like ride time. Like what even is this? And it ended up being real. And here we are doing what we do and just getting people hyped up about bikes.
That's epic.
It was really cool. It was like one of those things that is like, after all the craziness that I kind of, I don't want to say got myself into, but was naive enough not to walk away from, like it was nice to have this be a thing that felt good. Like I'm in the right place now. This is good. I found it.
I guess completely going off of that answer, what role does mental health play in your daily life and how does it present when you're riding?
To be honest, recently I've been struggling again. And a lot of it has spiraled from losing my grandma. And I am a distraction over healing type of person, which is not always a good trait. Um, but like I said, because my body needs so much movement, I would rather take the time to move than to kind of grieve. So I don't always let myself do what I need to do, and it ends up hitting me like a ton of bricks, like multiple times later on. And that's kind of exactly what's happening. Um, and it, there's other things that play into that, and like small things, big things, but it seems like, all the crazy things happen at one time. That's just life. Or we think it's happening all at one time because we're focused on them. Um, so mental health is insanely important to me. I have yet to work myself and my energy up to go in to talk to someone, but I like severely probably need to, just to get some things like out of my head so that I don't worry about them anymore. I have a lot of friends that are really, really good at listening and talking me through things and giving me both sides of the story. And I'm super thankful for them for that. And I've been journaling and doing all things like that. But the reason that I do so well with writing is because it's kind of my escape also. But there are definitely times when that escape is not a thing because my brain is just so on overload that like I can't really even ride and feel good at the moment. So at that point I take it back to the simple, like, I'm just gonna pedal. Just gonna pedal. And like that's usually okay. And it does its job with taking my, like, the whole science behind it, and kind of like takes my brain away for a second because I'm just focused on pedaling. Like, where are your feet right now? Where are your hands right now? How are you holding the handlebars or using the brake? Like just things like, it's like, when you're having a panic attack, there's these little exercises you can do, like count 5 things you see in the room, count 5 things you're going to do today, like just things that will make you think. So it kind of does the same thing for me with bikes. But it's definitely been interesting, like learning and growing and going through certain things, seeing how, as I grow up, how life changes and how my bike can help that. It definitely all coordinates together, but it's a little hard to talk about right now just because, like, obviously some things are still weighing a little heavy on my mind. But um it riding is one of those things that's like, it's free, it's always there, unless it's raining. But then, like, if you want to go ride in the rain, you go ride in the rain. But then you've also got this community of people who you've gathered from riding. So even if you can't ride, they're there and you have people to talk to. You have a good circle. Like, so when your mental health is a little low, it's nice to have those people to kind of bounce off of and learn from, and make you laugh or distract you or whatever you need at the moment.
How do you see your mental health being kind of connected to your ability to keep riding? Because what if there's a day that something happens and you can't ride any longer?
Well, it's definitely happened, and it's always a different situation. I've had a lot of meltdowns, and I hate to say that because it's just not my personality. I'm typically a very cheerful personality, but I'm also very good at kind of putting up a good front for people, because, and this is going to sound kind of cocky, but I've been told a lot of times that I kind of bring a lot of light to a room, and I don't want to be the person that lets that down if I'm having a bad day. But then I stop and I kind of remember, like, I'm human too, and I'm allowed to. I'm allowed to have feelings. I'm allowed to have bad days. And no one really can say anything about that because that's me. Um, but there's definitely been times where it kind of like stops me in my tracks from riding. And if that's the case, then I tend to try to go do yoga, or I go to the gym. I try to come up with some solution. My body needs to move. So, I can only sit and read for so long before my brain starts wandering. If I'm physically moving, it's a little easier for me. But it's something that I've had to learn to work through. And like, sometimes things get really, really rough and I have to figure out something. And if writing's not available, I have to figure out something because I don't like to live in being stuck on things like that, and I'm working on learning to let myself breathe and heal through things, and giving myself space and time and quiet. but I know I can't handle it for very long. So I go try to do something else productive that I can kind of like do at the same time.
So what are those things that have worked outside of BMX and just casually riding as well?
Running. Running has helped me like crazy. Just walking, just getting fresh air, being outside. I have not explored the hiking trails out here like I want to. We don't have a whole lot, but there are some really cool ones. Um, just any kind of outside thing for sure. Like I've noticed that doing a lot of yoga has been helping lately, and it's super good for my body because like I'm still moving, but it's a different kind of movement. Let's see what else have I've done. I go to the gym, I force myself to take a drive. Like I just like I don't sit. Anything that I try to get away from would probably relate to sitting. So I try to just like get myself out and doing things.
What is the coolest experience that you've had through BMX? Where did it happen and how did it happen?
To be honest, it was Swamp Fest, that crazy loop video. I did not know my body could be that persistent. I didn't know I could turn off my feelings that hard. I didn't know that I could accomplish something that I shouldn't have gone after within like 2 years of riding. Um, I loved the feeling of saying like I'm gonna do this and then just doing it. It was like super empowering and it was really cool and a confidence boost and it also helped connect me to a lot of people because like I said, you kind of have to earn your place in BMX, but once you kind of make a name for yourself in that sense to where people see that how much you love it, like you'll have a lot of really cool people who are super helpful with advice and all sorts of things reach out, which is really awesome. And I'm thankful for that for sure. But that definitely has been the absolute best thing that I've experienced so far, the coolest so far. There's a lot of things that we do that are just like really awesome, just good, like good soul feeling type things with riding. Whether it be, you know, just hanging out with 10 of our friends in a parking lot and we're trying to ride manuals or wheelies through the parking spaces and we're laughing the whole time. Like, I think those moments of where, you know, you kind of forget there's a world outside of what's happening and you're just in the moment and laughing and like having a good time. Like, those are my favorite times of having things go on. But like, I don't know. I got to say that was probably the coolest most like surprising thing that I never thought I could do and did. And it was such a short time too. Like, you know, a lot of people need like time to decide what they're going to do and, you know, think it over and plan. And I was really proud of myself that I made a decision, saw my direction, went after it, worked on it till I got it and then got it. I felt like an absolute train wreck the next day, but I got it and I was so excited that like it like went it proved to me like if I put my mind to it, I can do it.
And
And I
then
needed that.
and then it went viral.
Which I totally wasn't expecting because that was a little while later. And actually we are going back to that event October 30th. I don't know if it's going to be the same stuff going on, but I am working on something a little crazy that I'm hoping can make happen. I just don't quite have the resources at the moment. But I'm figuring it out.
Ooh,
I have to be very quiet about it though. Just yeah.
some exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, more motivating stuff, which I need. I love that. I need things to look forward to, and that's definitely good for my mental health. Is having like I don't want to say I'm a planner because everything we do with BMX is very like, hey, you want to go to California for the weekend? Yeah, okay, we're going to California for the weekend. Why not? It also helps when you have people's couches to stay on and you're not buying hotels and rental cars and all these other crazy things. But I like the hype of planning your attack for your personal motivation. That is one of my favorite things to do. So
What is on the agenda for the rest of this year and then also 2022? I mean, what can we look for from you?
um well, I can't go to Swamp Fest, which is the October event, without doing something ridiculous. The first year I went, I learned how to wall ride, and that was really cool. Um So that is a massive event for me coming up. I'll be doing a live feed for that for the long hairs, which is actually a men's hair tie company who've kind of like adopted me as their like little sister. um, and they're the coolest guys. They actually donate some of their proceeds to kids. There's more information on their site about that. They're just like a really rad group of people that just they make the most awesome hair ties and hair care stuff, and they're just like really good vibes, really good people, really good vibes. So I'll actually be doing a live feed for that event. So I'm pretty excited about that. As far as the rest of the year, I don't know. I mean, I've got some big goals that I want to accomplish for me. And no real like jams or crazy events coming up outside of that gnarly one in Florida, which I keep referring to as Swamp Fest. But I can imagine something somewhere is going to be happening because us BMX people, we can't sit still for too long without having all of our friends in one place. Corona, the whole COVID thing was nuts. It was like we all missed each other. Everyone was a mess. Like it just, it was, it was tough for us, like us people who need that groupness.
And those were all the questions I had to ask. Is there anything else that you think that I missed about your story or that you want to include, to plug? I mean, I can include links in the show notes if there's something coming up that you want to talk about.
Um, I wish there was more coming up because the things have been so like wild lately, with rescheduling and things getting canceled like that. Like it's kind of up in the air, which scares me a little bit. Um, but I mean I am doing some really cool things with work. So I'll be headed to California for the Sea Otter Classic. That'll be in October also. And then there's a crazy mountain bike race that I'm not participating in, but kind of want to. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I'll be there for work. That'll be in Michigan in November. So like there's some cool things coming up, not necessarily BMX related. But yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I just have to give like a really big thank you to all of my family, my friends. Like this is all about mental health and being okay and kicking butt in your own way and finding your way and your light and all that craziness. And like I have a really solid support system, whether it be the companies that support me, whether it's like the gear they throw me or the constant check-ins that they send over to me, like hope you're doing well, we love you. Just like I have a lot of people that are just really awesome that I'm thankful for. And like there's a lot to mention, but I'm severely like I'd be super underwater without them, and I appreciate them for sure. So big thank you to all of those people. But yeah.
And is there anything else that you think that I've missed about telling your story? Any big life events or things that you wanted to square away? And then also, is there anything that you were not comfortable with having on this podcast from what you've said today?
No, I don't think so.